Right, well, good morning to everybody from sunny Bolton, and it's an absolutely wonderful morning today. There's a little bit of frost on the roofs, but who cares about that when the sun's shining on full beam. So, got quite a busy day today, so thought I'd go down to the woods, grab a couple of hours, have a bit of a chill out, something to eat, a bit of breakfast, some birch tapping maybe, and yeah, it's just lovely today. So we'll come back in a minute or so when we're further down the line towards the woods. Well, here we are, heading towards the subway as per usual. Very noisy morning again. Everyone rushing about on the merry way, and really warm, sun shining. It's going to be a good one. So let's come back to you in a few more minutes when we're a bit further on and we're through the subway. Now we're going under now. And voila, here we are at the woods. A little bit misty this morning, but absolutely beautiful. Sun shining on full beam. Starting to get quieter now, which is always a bonus. And as we walk past these bulbs again, I think these are probably ready to, or some of them have started flowering. The daffodils have just started, as you can see, and they'll probably be fully open in the next week, I would have thought. So before I go on a proper mooch around the woods, I'm going to look for some birch trees and set a couple of taps up, and then go for a walk around the woods and have a chill out, have a brew, something to eat. Just look at this. One of our greatest treasures, and we simply don't acknowledge it. Here for us to use and to interact with. So onward. Right, well, we're further into the woods, and thankfully the sound of morning traffic and rush hour has calmed down considerably. So just going to walk through this bit here and see if there's any good spots to chill out and get a little fire going for a brew and breakfast. And curiously, I've just tried tapping a couple of birch trees, and there was absolutely nothing at all, not even a drop. And I am wondering, I could be very wrong, if this is anything to do with the very, very dry weather that we had last year, and we've not had a particularly wet winter, I'd say. So just a thought, but something I'm going to look into. So let's carry on. I hope. Sound of dogs barking. Let's see if we can find a good spot here. I've not spotted any deer yet this morning, but there's always a chance of that. Yeah, I can just make out the dog walking folk. So I'll go in a different direction to them. There's about 6 of them, and they've got what looks to be fairly large and rowdy Alsatians. So let's go and make myself invisible and go and find a decent spot to chill. Right, so just hit one of the many paths in this woods, and plenty of horses' hoof prints here. There's a traveller's site quite close by, as I've mentioned in previous videos, and they bring the horses down here for something to eat and tether them up. So now I'm going to go up this hill here and chill out when we get on the top. I can't be bothered looking around for ages for a spot to make a fire. I think on top of this hill will be enough. Plus it'll be good to see the spectacular views of this lovely morning. So let's get up there. Right, well here we are, and found a fallen tree here that I can sit down and chill out on and have my brew. Got a fire going, really easy to get the fire going, but we've had really dry weather over the last 4 or 5 days, and most of the windfall and the twigs and stuff that's about are really dry, so that's great. So as I say, off the beaten track. It's all gone quiet again. I think the dog walkers have disappeared back to suburbia. So it's time for me to relax and kick back and have a nice cup of tea and a roll up. And this is my view while I sit down and drink my tea that I've just made on the fire. Absolutely breathtaking. So lucky to have woodlands like this so close. Feel blessed. So I'm going to finish my brew and my fag off and then get a bit of porridge on. And I've got porridge on the go now, and it's such a joy to be able to light these fires really easily at the onset of spring, and probably about 2 minutes away from breakfast and not a soul around. Oh, did I speak too soon then? I just heard something. So time to see how this porridge is going and have something to eat. Back in a few minutes. And there we are, I've had my brew. Had a lovely breakfast of porridge and mixed seeds and sultanas. Had a clean up. You can't really tell that I've been here, I would say. Rucksack packed. So we're going to go and explore a little bit more of the woods on this beautiful day and see what we can find. So let's get a bit of a move on and we'll see you in a few minutes. Right, so let's have a bit of a walk round and a bit of a chat. I know I've said it about 1,000 times today, but such a beautiful and lovely day, and probably sound a bit cautious here, but I'm not quite ready to say that it's spring as we know it yet. There's quite a lot of signs that it's spring. There's bulbs are up. 1 or 2 of the trees have started budding, but if last year's anything to go by, we could be under a foot of snow with minus wind chill factor within a week or so. And this is down to our changing climate again, as I've mentioned before. And there doesn't really seem to be enough alarm or worry about climate change. And something I noticed last year in Bolton particularly, when the moors were ablaze, miles and miles of the moors were burning because there hadn't been rain for months on end. Basically we had a drought in Bolton in the north of England, and then when the drought ended, a private water company, United Utilities, made a statement and they said if summer of 2019 is the same as 2018, then there won't be enough water to go round. And not an eyelid was batted when this statement was made. There was no outcry, no uproar, no protestations, and it just seems that we live in a world where people care less and less about the things that keep us alive. And of course we know why this is, particularly the last 40 years of rampant consumerism, of manufacturers making goods that have a built-in obsolescence, and it's really not good enough. And it's not just a case of you know, I care about the planet and I want to look after the planet. It's everything. It's human relations, it's our relations with nature and ecosystems, and somewhere along this path things have become very, very warped. And at least there's hope in things like Extinction Rebellion, and there's now lots of permaculture and community food growing groups popping up all over the UK, all over Europe, all over the States. So there is a fight back going on. It still doesn't mean that, you know, that many of us don't worry ourselves to death about this dire situation that we're in. But all we can do really is do the right thing and try and live as lightly on the earth as we can. And when I think about these things, which is quite often nowadays, it takes me back to the days of when I was a young punk rocker. And I remember one of the bands, Flux of Pink Indians. I think they had, it was either an album or a single called Strive to Survive, causing as least suffering as possible. And this track, album, title or whatever has resonated with me over the decades, and it's something that I keep revisiting whenever I think about this ridiculous wanton destruction of the planet and of each other. And it is something that's on my mind quite a lot, particularly the last few years. And we now have a US president who's a climate denialist, amongst other things, and he's opening coal mines up, and he wants to turn America and run America on coal again. And without going into the tedium of binary left and right wing politics, let's just say that this man and lots of his followers are absolute psychopaths who have no concern and no interest in the life of the planet and in the life of humans and the flora and fauna that live upon it. Might well be the case that he's ousted in a few years, and others like him who seem to think that we can just carry on abusing the planet and that the planet will somehow repair itself magically. This is not the case, of course. We do know that ecosystems recover, but when we have hundreds of thousands of companies all over the world relentlessly hammering ecosystems for resources, then any sort of repair of ecosystems by the system itself is either not going to happen or it's going to take a very long time. So yeah, it's a bit grim today's conversation, but that's the reality that we're living in. A very warped and almost backward world where people seem more interested in owning the latest iPhone, owning the latest flash car, than breathing fresh air and having a decent life for themselves and their families. There's lots of explanations of how we got there. I sort of gave my angle a few minutes back, consumerism, built-in obsolescence, but basically it's down to the greed of individuals, and the self-interest that motivates these people, where they don't give a damn about anything else or any other person. And there's lots of theories of human nature, of individualism and collectivism, but whatever your views are on this, most of the positive things that have been invented by humans have involved groups of people inventing them, research teams, groups of friends. And even if we do entertain the idea that certain individuals have invented incredible things in their own solitude and on their own, this doesn't mean that there isn't collective efforts and that we don't move better as a team. And the type of future that we're facing, we can't carry on as 7 billion isolated individuals. We have to come together. The world of the future requires people to work together. So that's just a few words for today. Bit grim, I say. It's a beautiful day, but I think these things need discussing a lot more, and we need to act in whatever appropriate ways that we're able to deal with these things. So that's a couple of minutes of a fairly laid back rant from me, so we'll carry on walking, and over and out. Right, so just coming to the end of these woods, and leaving via a different path today that isn't a foot deep in freezing cold icy water. So there's some more daffodils there. They're doing a lot better than the first daffodils we saw on the path because of more exposure to direct sunlight, as you'd expect. Surprisingly quiet here, really. It's quite a busy road, this usually. And it's always the case that when you start getting near the road, all rubbish starts appearing. That's sad to see, really. Plastic everywhere. Basically another symptom that we really need to change how we live, how we see the world, how we work, and the transition into this new world by far doesn't have to be a world of slog and misery. Imagine a world where you're only working 2.5-3 days a week, and the other days that you'd usually be spending earning money for somebody else, that you're out in the garden, or that you're making something that you and your family can use at home. Just requires a bit of thought and resources, of course. So I'll bid you all a farewell and a good day, and I hope you all enjoy what you're doing today. Thanks for watching, and as usual, if you're into permaculture, community food growing, outdoor skills, bushcraft, please give us a like, and please follow us on YouTube and Twitter. So see you soon. Over and out.